What's up, everybody? Gosh, I've missed y'all so much. It feels
We
like
missed you too, Christy.
Oh, and we will be back to our regularly scheduled weekly program real soon because it's just killing me not to see you guys every week. Surprise! This is Dr. Miles Bodson, not Miss Holly Jensen. She's feeling a little under the weather. I suspect that it's her climate change because she has just joined us here in the South from California. We did not fairly forewarn her about seasonal allergies. This is something she's not used to. And but she will be back and better than ever. But that is okay because Dr. Bodson was happy to come in and meet with y'all today and share his information. He is a dear, dear friend. He has been, well, he was a chiropractor full-time, sold his practice because what he did was so successful. He turned it into a whole nother business. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? My favorite story about Dr. Bodson is if you ever meet him at an event and he is there with old classmates, they don't call him Dr. Bodson. They're like, Miles Notes. Because he is such a note taker, and he is a genius. He sees things in a way that we don't, which is how he took a wellness practice and grew it. And you're going to hear this amazing way that he took all of that stuff in his brain, automated it to engage patients to become more committed to chiropractic. And I really haven't seen anybody else do this like they have or as successfully. Dr. Bodson, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I will do my best to fill Holly's shoes. For those who don't know, Holly and I worked together going on 20 years. We just finished 19 years working together. And after all these years, I'm excited to do her program. I'm excited to fill it, jump in and get to say, yeah, I get to teach the CAs instead of doctors all the time. So I am thrilled to be with you guys here today. And with no further ado, I suppose we should just get started, get right into this, shouldn't we, Christy?
You sure can.
All right. So let me flip on my slides here and show my screen. Let's see, pick the right screen. By the way, if you see me looking around as I'm talking, I know you can see I may not be looking straight in the camera. I have multiple monitors where I'm at, so I may be looking around at different things. But there you see myself on the cover of the American Chiropractor, along with the one and only Holly Jensen, who I know you are all excited to listen to and hear today. And you'll have another opportunity to hear her when she's back available for you guys. I will let you know, though, you can always read about Holly or read her stuff. For those of you who don't know, there, like you see, she's on the cover of the Chiropractic Assistant magazine there. And along with Christy, is always writing articles in that magazine. In the most recent issues, here's an article she just wrote you can go look at called the 4 Things You Can Do Today to Make Tomorrow Better. There's an article Holly has in there. And here's another issue of the Chiropractic Assistant magazine that you guys can go look at. That is an article of hers of something you've probably all dealt with, and that is handling difficult patients. We've all had those difficult patients. So there's some great stuff in here. So Holly's constantly contributing to the profession, and I'm very proud to have been working with her for all these years. And with no further ado, let's get started today. In fact, I'll just share a quick story. Holly and I were in Michigan together last week, speaking at the Michigan Association of Chiropractic, and her and I did a 7-hour program for CAs only. The two of us taught for CAs the entire time, and it was a blast. In fact, I just was telling Christy how much more I prefer working with the CAs because you're so eager to learn this stuff, and I'm excited to share it with you today. So I will encourage you to interact. If you have questions, if you have comments, go ahead and put them in the chat. Go ahead and Christy will moderate that and let me know and interrupt me if there's a question you want me to address a little bit further. But we are here to serve you and your practices and help you have a joyful and joyous career in chiropractic. In fact, if you look at the cover of Holly's magazine here, it says, Holly Jensen finds career in chiropractic rewarding. She didn't come up with that title. After they interviewed her, they came up with that title for that article. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to go take a look at that. But I hope you guys find your career in chiropractic very rewarding, and that's what I want to help you guys do today. So as the title of today's talk is 5 ways CAs can help their practice thrive. I know from my own personal life that I practiced for nearly 20 years. In fact, my next slide, I believe, is a picture. There we are in front of my practice back in the day. There's me on the far right with the funny looking mustache. And there's Holly actually right there in the middle. This is probably around the year, I'm going to guess 2005, 2006, somewhere in that time frame, in front of my office called the Chiropractic Wellness Center. And I'm very proud to say also the young lady, young woman, I should say, with the white tank top there, that's Laura, who still works with me as well, going on, I think this is her 18th or 19th year working with me as well. And long story short, I just want to give a little background real quick. And that is when I first got out of school and started practicing in the early 90s, there was this new thing that you guys are all very familiar with today, but it was a brand new thing when I first got in practice. And it was this thing called managed care. HMOs, PPOs, where people had limited coverage. We were just coming off of the 1980s where everybody had unlimited insurance and insurance covered everything. And here I was, this young kid out of school who never participated in the 80s. And in the 90s, I got out of school wanting to, run a wellness type practice. But everybody who came in my practice had this thing called an HMO or a PPO. And I could not get into those programs. They were very limited back then. They wouldn't let someone new like me become part of the insurance programs. So I couldn't get in. And as a result of that, long story short, I struggled a lot. I struggled to the point where 9 out of 10 patients who came to see me had one of these insurance programs that I couldn't, utilize. And it resulted in me having a lot of challenges in practice. And if any of you know your doctors really well, be more than just simply they're your employer, but maybe you've become friends with the doctor and you've gotten to know their families, you've probably experienced in some of these offices some stresses that the doctors have, had challenges in their life. And those challenges come from when a practice is not really, really successful. And in my own personal life, that challenge resulted in me almost giving up on chiropractic, where I literally was ready to give up on being a chiropractor and go back to finish school, to finish my engineering degree. And I ended up not doing that. Obviously, I'm sitting here in front of you. That's not what happened. What I ultimately did is I ended up figuring things out. I got a little help, and I eventually figured things out to the point where I became wildly successful in practice. To the place now where we're, as a company, outside of running a practice, we now serve thousands and thousands of chiropractors and CAs, helping them grow their practices. And today I'm going to share with you the 4 key things or 5 key things, as Holly alluded to, that are so important in helping a practice thrive. And I got to tell you, CAs, there's no way us doctors can do it without you. In fact, I'm 100% positive we can't have a thriving practice without a good team. Now, are there exceptions? Yeah, there's probably exceptions to that rule, but I'd say as a general rule, there's no way I would be where I am today, and there's no way most of the doctors I know would be where they are today without a strong team, without a strong team. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping teams grow and contribute to the practice. So, by the way, here's Holly again. There it is. This, you can see at the top left, it says 2002. So this is almost 19 years ago. This is when she first started working with me all those years ago. And she looks like she's 12 years old in that picture. But anyway, point is that we've been working together a long time, and we have a lot to share with you guys today. For those of you who would love to see a story about becoming a chiropractor, like the story I just shared with you, I would encourage you, write this down. Maybe Christy could put the link in available for you guys. At some point later today, tomorrow, over the weekend, go watch this movie, The Calling Movie. Go to www.thecallingmovie.com. It's a 45-minute movie. It's short. You can watch it. You can stream it for free. And it's the story it's the inspiring story, really, of what it is to become a chiropractor. And more importantly for you guys, the inspiring story of a CA making a career out of chiropractic. And I would encourage you guys to go watch it. In fact, when we shared it with the CAs in Michigan last week, we shared it with them on the first day to go watch it. And the next day when we came back, I asked who watched it, and every CA that watched it raised their hand and said, man, that was so inspiring. I really enjoyed it. And I share it with you because ultimately it'd be great for you to watch it. I think you'll find it a very inspiring story. You'll get to see, by the way, the actress that plays the role of Holly. So there's a role based upon our lives. The actress nailed Holly's personality. I think you'll really enjoy it. So there you go. There's thecallingmovie.com. I would encourage you to go watch that and enjoy it. So let's get into today's material, because I know you didn't come here just to hear me tell stories about our past. You came here to learn something, and that's what I'm going to do today. What's the number one challenge preventing chiropractors from thriving? We said that the title of today's talk are the 5 things you could do to help a practice thrive. Well, if you want to help it thrive, you should know, like, what's the biggest thing preventing the practice from thriving? And I'll tell you, when I come from the perspective, as Christy just said, we have a certain perspective. I've had the opportunity and the blessing to talk with thousands of chiropractors and their staff. And across the board, what we see is the number one thing preventing chiropractors from thriving is poor patient retention, patients falling out of care, patients not following through, patients dropping out, however you want to term it. And ask yourself as CAs, how does the doctor feel? how do you feel when you have Mary, the patient, who just disappears, who you thought got the big idea of chiropractic and still drops out? Or you thought was going to say yes to a care plan, but doesn't, or did say yes, and once they start feeling better, they drop out, or they use their insurance, and as soon as the insurance runs out, you don't see them anymore until January of next year. Like, I'm sure you've experienced those things. In fact, I'm positive you've experienced those things in your practice, and those things are frustrating. I bet your doctor's breathing down your neck every time a patient doesn't come back, and they're asking you, hey, where's Mary? Do the recalls, get on the phone. Like, what happened to them? I mean, every time I do this in front of a live audience, the hands go up. Yeah, we have that going on. And I got to tell you, it's challenging for the doctor. And I know it's challenging for you as CAs, and that practice will thrive and you'll have more joy in your career as a CA if you had patients following through and not dropping out. Really, when we peel back the layers of all the challenges most practices have, when you get to the core of it, this is it. That patients just don't get it. They don't follow through. They drop out, whatever it may be. And imagine how excited your doctor would be in practice if you were able to show them how they could stop losing patients or reduce the dropout. How excited would they be to keep you and not just keep you, but help you grow into a career if you're helping that practice grow? So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. The challenge of poor retention. Now, thriving, high profit chiropractic practices have one thing in common. When I say high profit, I also want to clarify, it's really important your practices are profitable. It's not just about seeing the patients. Of course, that's the core purpose of being chiropractic, is take care of people. But at the end of the day, it needs to be profitable. Why? Well, so the doctor is getting rewarded, and the doctor is able to then reward the CAs financially for your jobs in the practice. And hopefully your doctors are doing that. Hopefully you have bonus systems in place and things of that nature so that you're being rewarded for the growth of the practice. If you don't have that, well, then either reach out to your doctor or reach out to us, and we'll give you some suggestions on types of bonus programs you could put in place so that you as CAs are being rewarded for the growth you're helping occur in the practice. So thriving high profit practices have one thing in common. What they have high retention. So we just got done saying the number one challenge in practice is patient dropout or poor retention. Well, the practices that are killing it, that are really successful, the ones that are really growing, what they have in common is they have high retention. They have good patient compliance. If the doctor is recommending 6 months of care, the patients are doing the 6 months. If the doctor is recommending 3 months, the patient's doing 3 months. If the doctor is recommending a year, the patient's completing the year of care. They're staying compliant to the recommended care plan. And imagine how much easier your life and your job is if you know that if you scheduled someone for Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m., you can count on them being there. You don't have to worry about them not showing up. Imagine how much easier your life is if when patients do miss visits, they know they need to make them up. You don't have to somehow convince them of that. The intention here is to build a culture in the practice where patients follow through. They're compliant. And I got to tell you, as a doctor, it's very rewarding when patients follow through, because the number one reason patients don't get the results that we believe they should get is not because the doctor isn't doing the right things. It's because the patient fails to follow through. And if you help patients follow through, your doctor will end up getting better results with their patients, which ultimately helps everybody. Helps the practice, helps the doctor, and it certainly helps the patient. That's ultimately what we're trying to talk about here. High retention practices have one thing in common. All right, so I'm kind of breaking this down for you. Initially, I said, what's the number one problem? Poor retention. The successful practices out there have one thing in common. They have high retention. Now, in order to have high retention, they have one thing in common. What they have is they have loyal patients. That's what they have. You all have that patient who's super loyal to the practice, that you know no matter what, they're showing up. You never have to call them if they miss an appointment. You're not worried about it. You know they're going to come later that week. We all have those people that you know are loyal to the practice. They basically, you can't shake them to leave. Like that's the loyal person. Imagine having a practice full of those people. Like almost everybody in the practice is loyal like that. Like, you know, if something bad happens, they're not disappearing. They're going to stay with you. A loyal patient is 80% more likely to choose you over competitors. And loyal patient is twice as likely to recommend you to others, and they're likely to spend twice as much in the practice. See, a loyal patient is worth way more to the practice than someone who just shows up for a few visits and you never see him again. If you focus your energies, if you CAs do things, and we're going to talk about this today, what are things you could be doing as a CA to help build patient loyalty? Because ultimately, if you have a lot of loyal patients, your practice will have high retention. And if you have high retention, that will give you that successful practice that the doctor wants. And man, when you're working in that practice, it's just so much more fun, more joyful, more rewarding, all of those things. If Holly was here right now, that's what she'd be telling you, how much of a pleasure it was to see the results and how much easier it is to run that practice when you have a practice full of loyal patients. You probably know this already. I probably haven't told you something you didn't know already. Maybe I'm making it very clear for you. Hopefully I am. But ultimately, the aim of having a successful practice is to have a large volume of loyal patients. A loyal patient is someone who will not go somewhere else. And I want to show you a quick little video. I'm just going to show you a snippet of this video. And I want to give you a real rundown. This is a video I took years and years ago when I was still in practice, when I was studying what it took to get people to follow through. I made actually a study of this. Like, I was very curious what drove my patients' behavior to stay with me. And I would set up a camera and I would interview patients and ask them questions. Now, I'm not going to show you the entire video because it's too long in this webinar right now, but I'm going to show you a quick snippet. And I believe this snippet I'm about to show you is really the definition of what a loyal patient is. So here we go.
It's convenient. The location is convenient. The payment plan is convenient. The hours are convenient. The way the appointments are operated is convenient. I mean, all of that works. And actually, when I'm working with you, I got chiropractic insurance in my work, but I don't use it. I'd rather pay for it myself and be here where all of the elements of a great staff, the front office greeting you, knowing who you are.
So if you really, hopefully you guys were able to hear it. If someone wasn't able to hear it, Christy will send you the link to this video. But ultimately what she said was a couple things I want to point out. Number one, she said about convenience, the convenience of the practice. And I will tell you that word convenience came up over and over and over in almost every interview I did. That what drove people's behavior to be in the practice was a big influence on them was the convenience of things. And if things that were inconvenient really got in the way of them staying. If you guys are seeing in your practice things that make it inconvenient for your patients, you got to eliminate those things. That means if the doctor's always running behind, or if there's always a long wait, or whatever it is that gets in the way of people seeing, that will kill the retention of the practice. Another thing she said, and to me, this is what makes this the definition of a loyal patient. She said, I got insurance that would cover me, going somewhere else, but I'd rather not use it. I'd rather stay here and pay for it myself. I don't know if you caught that, but I want to emphasize that. Here she is, a teacher, has insurance, will cover to go somewhere else, but she'd rather not use it. She'd rather stay there and not just pay for herself, but pay for her husband, pay for her daughter, all from the standpoint of because we were meeting her values. And I will tell you, a lot of what drove her desire to be there was a lot of what you do as CAs. Knowing my name, you heard her say things like knowing my name and the convenience of the scheduling and the payments and all of these things all drove her loyalty to the practice. And I interviewed dozens and dozens of patients like her, and I learned a lot from them of what drove their behavior to stay versus those who left. And that's what we're going to focus on today. What are the things you need to be doing in the practice that creates loyalty? One little fun thing I'll say as a side note is when I interviewed patients, I didn't really hear them saying, well, I stay because you're a great chiropractor or because of your technique or yada, that type of stuff, which at first I was a little kind of thrown back. Like, what do you mean? I don't get any credit for any of this, but all kidding aside, at the end of the day, what drove their behavior to stay with me had really little to do with the chiropractic and had most to do with what you as CAs do at the front desk. If you're applying the things I'm about to show with you, if you're doing, along with your doctor, I should say, the things I'm about to show you today. So I'm just kind of setting up right now. The big game plan here is you focus on retention. And the way you do that is by focusing on creating loyal patients. And the way you focus on loyal patients is what we're going to get into now. What creates patient loyalty? Oop, I don't want to play it again. Let's go to the next one. What makes a patient loyal and not drop out? Here we go. Write these down. Number one, loyal patients need frequent contact. They need frequent contact. They need to hear from you on a regular basis. They need emails going out to them every week. They need text message reminders. They need Facebook posts. They need newsletters. They need to hear from the doctor or with a phone call. Like, they need frequent contact. That the more frequent a patient hears from you, the more likely they are to stick with you. And this is, some people mistakenly think what I'm referring to here is patients need patient education. And us chiropractors, and I'm sure you've witnessed this in your own practices that you work at, that your doctors and maybe you yourself spend a lot of time educating your patients. And yeah, patient education is valuable. There's benefits to patient education, but I will tell you, patient education has the least impact on patient retention. Of all the things I'm about to show you right now, educating a patient has the least impact. And I'll prove my point. I bet you have patients who understand chiropractic and still drop out. I bet you do. I know, in fact, you do. I bet you have patients who don't understand chiropractic and have been with you for years. I bet you know people who shouldn't smoke and still do. I bet you know people who know they should exercise and still don't. I bet you know people who know they should be eating right and still don't. Like, people know, but still that doesn't change their behavior. Knowledge is everywhere. We have more knowledge today than you can imagine, and yet people's behaviors don't necessarily change because of it. So my point is that yes, patient education is of value, but what's more important is your name and your basically your name being in front of them over and over. When I say your name, I mean your practice, your doctor, even you as a CA. Like, it's in front of them on a regular basis so they know that you're alive, basically. That's really important. And that's true for all businesses, not just chiropractic, but frequent contact is extraordinarily important. That's number one. Number two that's important is loyal patients need feedback. They need to know how they're doing. They need to know, are they making progress? Are they benefiting from care? You know, I'm sure you had examples where patients start feeling better and they drop out. They're feeling better and there's no longer the symptoms to keep them motivated. And the problem is that if your doctor wants patients, continuing care beyond the symptomatic, picture, beyond the point of time where the symptoms are there to motivate them to continue, they're feeling better. Well, then patients need feedback. They need to know how they're progressing, and not just any feedback. They need feedback that's intuitive. Intuitive, meaning it's self-explanatory. There's no need for the doctor to interpret it for them. There's no need to explain it. They get it. I'll use an analogy. I'm sure some of you watching right now will use a Fitbit. And that Fitbit gives you feedback to let you know, are you on track to accomplish your goal of steps? Are you not accomplishing the goal? It might even give you a little buzz to remind you, hey, pick up the pace. You're not walking enough. And that feedback will motivate you to continue the process. That feedback gives your patients the ability to know they're either making progress or not. And the failure of your office, your doctor, and maybe even yourself, but specifically the doctor, giving the patient feedback will lead to them leaving the practice. 100% of the time, we'll see that. In fact, I've seen it cases where a patient comes to a doctor who's been to other chiropractors in the past. And if your doctor or yourself have been in the habit of asking the patient, why are you coming to this office now? Why are you coming here and not going back to the prior doctor? If you've made a point of asking those questions, you've probably heard patients say things like, well, I just don't know how I was doing over there. I just felt like they wanted me to keep coming back over and over. There was this negative sentiment they had associated with that prior office. Where that generally comes from is the prior doctor did not give the patient feedback that was intuitive, where it became automatic for them now. And I'll explain in a moment what I mean by it being intuitive. The third thing patients need to stay in the practice and be loyal is, quite frankly, this is something that will make your lives easier, tremendously easier in practice, is you need frictionless payments. You need it to be in your practice where all payments are automated. Everything. Those who are on monthly recurring payments, those who are on one-time payments, I don't care what kind of payment it is, it's frictionless. So what does that mean? Well, here's the most friction. This is the most friction. Every visit, they stop, they pull out their wallet, they hand it across the counter, and you collect payment. That is the worst way to run the practice. Absolutely 100%. If you're doing that in your practice right now, I am telling you, you are losing patients because of that. It is inconvenient. And as you saw the video with the teacher, convenience is a driving force for people. The more friction in the payments, the less they're going to see you. So that means if you're doing things in your practice right now, like you're sending out statements every month for patients to pay a bill, that's one of the worst things you could do. If you're using a financing program like Care Credit and they mail a bill in the mail every month to that patient, bad idea. Anything that reminds the patient of the money over and over, bad for the practice. You want to basically have in the practice where if someone's on a recurring payment, it's automated. It's an auto debit. Or if it's a one-time payment or an incremental payment, like maybe every 10 visits you charge them, it's automated, where they've signed a form that basically says, hey, every visit I come in, automatically charge my visit. Or every 10 visits, charge me automatically for the next 10 visits. Meaning you're not having to ask the patient to interact with you to make that payment. They've agreed to it up front of whatever the program is, whether it's one visit at a time paying automatically, whether it's 10 visits at a time automatically, or whether it's, a monthly payment, whatever it happens to be in that scenario, it's all automated. And I got to tell you, CAs, this will make your life so much happier. I know one of the leading stressors for CAs is asking for money, chasing money, all of the stuff associated with money. And if you automate it, you'll find tremendous joy in practice. I can't emphasize it enough. And again, if Holly was sitting here right now, she'd be screaming that from the rooftops for you guys right now. The fourth thing your patients need to be loyal is forecasting of care. Quite frankly, your doctor needs to be telling patients right up front what they need. They need to tell them whether it's going to be 3 months of care, 6 months of care, a year, 2 weeks. I don't care, whatever it is, whatever the doctor believes it is, they are being told right up front at a report of findings, hey, this is what I anticipate you're going to need to get these results. Here's not what to do. Well, let's get you started for a few visits, see how you do. That's not a good idea. Let's not do this. Let's use your insurance. And when the insurance runs out, then we'll convert you to cash later. That's a terrible model. It doesn't work. You wonder why patients, after paying a $20 copay, drop out when you're now expecting to pay $50 or $60 a visit, when the insurance runs out. Never works. Not a good model. You want to build right up front a care plan for that patient, or your doctor needs to build that care plan, or at least tell you what the care plan is so that you as a CA can build it in the software, but you're building out the actual full recommended treatment plan. And I will tell you, when doctors are good at doing this, and a doctor and a CA are good at doing this, it is the foundation, quite frankly, of building a high retention practice. I shared with you before the link to that movie, the Calling movie, that I encourage you to go watch. And you'll see there's a scene in that movie where I'm ready to give up because I'm so frustrated at the fact that patients are dropping out and I'm having to refund prepaid money and, just not a great experience. I will tell you, the thing that took me from struggle, the thing that took me from actually having to move back in with my parents and, live with them because I couldn't afford to pay rent, the thing that took me from that struggle to ultimately become very successful in practice was these last two. Forecasting of care, where I put people on care plans, and then instituting frictionless payments. Those two things skyrocketed the practice. It really blew it up. And you CAs have a lot of control over this because ultimately this is something that you interact with as the CA at the front desk, that you should be on board 100% with wanting to do these things because it'll make the practice grow. It also make your personal life in practice, your career, much more rewarding. So these are referred to as the retention principles. These are the things I learned when I was interviewing patients all those years. And I was, asking questions and doing video recordings and stuff. This is ultimately what we learned, that these 4 categories of things are what were critical in building retention: frequent contact, feedback, frictionless payments, and forecasting care. And we refer to these now as the retention principles. And an easy way to remember these so you never forget them are the 4 Fs. You'll notice they all begin with an F: frequent contact, feedback, frictionless payments, and forecasting care. Those 4 things are what you need to focus on in practice, quite frankly. And if you focus on those with your patients, lo and behold, it'll lead to that patient becoming loyal to the practice. And when you've done that with every patient that comes through the door, the vast majority of those people will become loyal, which will ultimately build a high retention practice, ultimately creating all of the success and joy that we're talking about here. So to create patient loyalty, apply the 4 Fs. I'm going to introduce a new term here. We apply the 4 Fs, those 4 things I just went through, throughout what we call the loyal patient journey. The loyal patient journey. You see, a patient journey is the experience a patient has coming through your practice. And every patient has a journey. It could be 1 visit. It could be 10 visits. It could be a year. It could be 6, whatever it is, there's a journey. The question is, does that journey lead the patient to becoming loyal to the practice? And we've determined there is a specific journey we can do that routinely does that. That routinely takes that new patient who called you on the phone and ultimately turns them into a loyal practice member 6 months, 8 months, a year later. This is what that loyal patient journey looks like. It's literally like a game board. You'll see on here, there's 11 steps. And those 11 steps are the 11 key points in time throughout the journey that we see a patient that leads them to becoming loyal to the practice. And you'll see in here, there's 3 characters. There's the CA, there's the doctor, and there's a patient. And this is the process we take them through for them to become loyal. Now you're going to see, as I highlight in the green, all of those are the places where the CA has a vital role in this process. that throughout the entire process, we've laid out the CA on visit 1, visit 2, during the entire process. And it's a team effort. The doctor has to do their part. The CA has to do their part with the patient. And ultimately, if everything is done appropriately and done correctly, it'll lead to that person become loyal. And as I keep alluding to, if you do this over and over and over with multiple people, eventually that practice will be full of these loyal practice members. Now, if I go back here, you'll see on the game board all these little danger symbols. Danger, danger. What does that mean? If we go back to the game board here, we'll see that throughout the journey, those dangers, what they represent are points in time where it's common to lose a patient. We all know if you kind of look throughout the process of seeing a patient, there's common points where we lose them. For example, you might lose them after the initial phone call. They never come in for the initial visit. Well, I'm sure you've had that happen where someone doesn't show up. Or you might have the example where someone comes in for the initial visit and they never come back for the report of findings. You lost them after the initial visit. Why does that happen? What can you do to prevent that? You're going to have people also that after the report of findings, they don't come back in for care. Why? Why didn't they come back in? And we got to figure that out and take appropriate actions. Or it might be during the course of care, or it might be during the time of transitioning in the wellness. There's these points in time where it's common to lose people. And what we've identified, if you know what those are, you can put in place strategies and procedures and systems, if you want to think of it that way, that help minimize that, to help produce that. And that's what those dangers are. We want to avoid those. And if you're not cognizant of them, you're not aware of them, it becomes very easy to become victim of those. Now, when we look at those, here's those dangers that I pointed out. I guess I forgot I had a slide for it. So there, I'm outlining all the dangers there throughout the entire patient journey so that we don't lose people and we're aware of them. Now, when people work with us as a company, ChiroPractic, that's our company that Holly and I run, that company gives you the tools to help you alleviate that so that when you're utilizing, and I'm going to guess some of you watching right now may be members of ChiroPractic, or maybe some of you have heard of our company. Some of you maybe never heard of us at all, but ultimately that's what we do is we give you the tools to manage this whole process. So let's review for a moment. We start off by saying we want to have that successful, profitable practice. And how do we do that? We do that by focusing on retention. That's what ultimately we said. Building a practice full of loyal practice members. That's ultimately our model for doing it. In fact, we say that success, the foundation of your success is retention, that it's the number one problem that faces the practice. And we want to alleviate that problem. And that's, again, you have a major role in helping in that process as the CAs. The journey or the loyal patient journey is how we do that. There's actually a process we put patients through that leads them to becoming loyal, which ultimately will lead to the retention and success. And how do we do the journey? I introduced to you those 4 F's, those 4 principles, those principles of feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. We do those 4 things throughout the journey, throughout the entire journey. So at each step along the way, we may be applying feedback. We may be doing forecasting care. We may be doing frictionless payments, or we may be doing frequent contact. And we're doing them throughout the entire process at the appropriate times in order to facilitate the process of the patient getting to the end and ultimately becoming loyal to the practice. And not just that, obviously getting great results and referring their friends and family and all of those things that we want to make available. Now, I'm glancing at the notes real quick and I see, is there a copy of the patient journey, the loyal patient journey? The answer is, it is available when people are on a member of ChiroPractic. It'll be in there. In fact, we just are about to mail out a copy of it to every one of our members. So if you're a member, you'll be getting one in the mail and you'll have that as a big poster you could put up maybe in your back office to use as a training tool. Now, these 4 principles are what guide the journey. That journey leads to retention and success. So think of this pyramid as your success pyramid. You could think of it that way. Now, I have an exercise for each of you right now. I want to help you identify where you could benefit the most from this. So on a scale of 0 to 10, or a scale of 0 to 10, rate yourself right now. You don't have to share it with me right now, but write it down. On a scale of 0 to 10, how's your frequent contact? And let me help define the scale for you. A 0 would be you put no effort into frequent contact. There's literally really no systems in place for making sure you're staying in contact with people other than when the people show up. A 5, just to give you like the mid of that scale, a 5 would be maybe you send out a newsletter once a month, maybe an email newsletter, maybe you do birthday cards, and that's about it. A 10 would be you have campaigns of educational emails going out to every new patient. Every wellness patient's on a campaign of emails. Maybe you have text messages that go out to remind them of their appointments. You have a newsletter that maybe gets mailed out. You have TVs throughout the office. So when they're in the office, they're being educated everywhere they go in the office. You have a weekly topic with a weekly handout. You're doing Facebook posts, you're doing social media, you're doing Instagram, you're doing things that's getting your face in front of the patients frequently. That would be a 10. So that gives you kind of the rating on that scale, and write down what you believe your practice is right now. Is it a 0, or 5, 10, or somewhere in between? Maybe you're 4, an 8, whatever you want to rate you think it is. But I'd give you, that's kind of the definition of the scale of 0 to 10. So that's how you could rate your practice for frequent contact. Number 2 is, on a scale of 0 to 10, how's your feedback? How's your feedback? And I mentioned before, I was going to come back to this, where I said your feedback should be intuitive. So here's how your scale works. A 0 would be your doctor gives no feedback to patients. Maybe they tell them, yeah, you're feeling better, and it's all based on symptoms, how they're feeling, basically. That would, to me, is a 0, 1, 2, somewhere in that range. A 5 would be your doctor uses, or maybe you administer in your practice, some kind of technology that produces a report. Maybe it's a posture scan, or maybe it's a surface EMG. It's some kind of tool that produces a report, but that report isn't intuitive. What I mean by that is the patient needs to be, you need to explain what it means. You literally need to sit down and go with them, let me interpret this for you, or at least teach you how to read this. That's what I would say a 5 is. A 10 would be something similar to that, where you produce a report, but when you hand the report to the patient, you don't have to explain it. They just get it. And what we use, you'll see here what's called a wellness score, which is basically a report card. So you all went to school, and you remember the way you knew how you were doing in math and science and English and all these classes was you got report cards that gave you a letter grade. Nobody has to teach you today what a letter grade means. Maybe initially when you first went to school, you had to learn what it was, but eventually you know what a letter grade means. And I want you to imagine your doctor telling your patients, hey, when you initially came in, we determined your health was a D. And every progress exam, they'll say, hey, your D went from a D to a C to a C plus to a B to an A. Like, the letter grade makes it intuitive. And that's what I'm getting at. Just like the Fitbit is intuitive, we want the way the doctor gives feedback to the patient to be intuitive. So on a scale of 0 to 10, a 0 would be no feedback. A 5 would be feedback that the doctor has to explain to the patient. And a 10 would be feedback that's intuitive. That would be your 0 to 10 scale for feedback. The next is frictionless payments. Rate your office on a scale of 0 to 10. A 0 would be, there's lots of friction. We do things like every visit, people stop at the desk to pay their copays or pay their visit. We send statements in the mail every month. We use financing that sends bills in the mail. Like, nothing's really automated. That would be a 0. A 5 would be a portion of our practice is automated. We have some patients on maybe wellness programs that are paying monthly automatically. But we still have lots of people paying, over the counter, and we're still sending out statements and those kind of things. A 10 would be everything is automated. There's no statements. There's no need for them, quite frankly, because everything's being paid at the time of service or in advance. Everything is automated, whether it's a one-time payment or recurring payment. There's literally, everything is just kind of already agreed to with patients and automatically happening. That would be a 10 on the 0 to 10 scale. Next is your forecasted care, 0 to 10. A 0 would be the patient has no idea they have another visit until the doctor says, I'm going to see you next visit. Like, every visit they come in, there's no real forecasting. It's just simply, I'll see you next visit, that type of thing. A 5 would be the doctor said in a report of findings to a patient, let me get you started with care, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe they recommended a few visits, and then the patient doesn't know how long the whole program is going to take. They just know they have some care, maybe 10 or 12 visits, and every progress exam, they're waiting for the doctor to tell if they're done or not. That's what I would refer to as like an open-ended treatment plan. That's a 5. A 10 would be every new patient that comes in is, I'm not saying that everyone commits to it, but every patient is told right up front what the care plan is. They know it's going to be 4 months or 6 months or a year, whatever it is. And if they said yes, they've committed to that. And once the doctor gets good at this and the doctor CA team gets good at this, you should be enrolling 9 out of 10 patients in those types of programs of care, assuming they need it, assuming that's what the patient needs. So that would be a 10 on that 0 to 10 scale. So rate yourself in those 4 areas. Obviously, the max score you can get is a 40, and the worst you can get is a 0. And you don't have to share right now what you got, but that helps you identify in your practice, where are you? Where are the weak spots? where could you put some attention to help improve the patient loyalty potential, the potential of that person becoming more loyal to the practice? Now, I will tell you in these 4 areas, they're not all equal in their impact on a patient. What I mean is that a lot of practices do frequent contact. They're really good at patient education, but they're not good at the number 3 and number 4. They're not good at frictionless payments or forecasting care. And in spite of being really good at frequent contact, they don't have great retention. They don't have great loyalty. What we found is the number one of the 4, the one that has the greatest impact on your patient loyalty is number 3. I'm sorry, not number 3, number 4, forecasting care. Forecasting care has the biggest impact on whether patients will follow through or not. That's your care plans, basically. Number 3 is the second impact, the frictionless payments. That when you automate payments, it has the second greatest impact on your patient loyalty. That those 2 together really account for the majority, quite frankly, of how much patient loyalty you should expect to experience. I don't know if I'm saying that as clear as I should or I can. Basically, if you're going to focus your attention anywhere on these, you want to make sure number 3 and number 4 are definitely handled. Those are the most important when it comes to patient loyalty and patient retention. The other 2 of feedback and frequent contact, yes, they're important. They should definitely be part of the puzzle. They should definitely be part of the program. But if you're not doing the other 2 of frictionless payments and forecasting care, you'll end up beating your head against the wall of building retention. So CAs, if any of your doctors right now are not doing those, or they've been hesitant, or they need help in that, or they've tried it in the past. I mean, I meet doctors all the time who tried forecasting care, doing care plans, and they didn't know how to do it properly. So they were met with a lot of rejection for patients. So they gave up on doing it. And they said, oh, I don't do that care plan stuff. I don't believe in that stuff, or my patients don't want it. And they make excuses. The bottom line is that there is a way to do it properly. There's a way to do it successfully. And if you don't do it, you'll always be bumping your head against the ceiling of poor retention. That's really kind of the bottom line when it comes to that. So I want to share with you the results. I want to give you some case studies to kind of illustrate my point. And I'll say 2 things here. One is, this is sort of like your doctor or you telling patients about the success of other patients with chiropractic. You'll often tell the stories of other patients to encourage those not sure if this is the right thing to do or not. And to be quite transparent with you, that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to share with you the case studies of a few offices of what happens when they do this. Now, what I'm about to share with you is the financial collections, the revenue these practices generate each year. I want you to think of this revenue not just from a revenue standpoint, but understand that represents people getting care. Obviously, the revenue that comes into a practice is generated as a result of the services that doctor renders, that practice renders. So the more revenue means, obviously, there's more services being rendered. And when we go through this chart here, you'll see back in 2007, that's a long time ago now. I hear in 2021, 2007, they did about 50 some odd thousand. I know it's hard to read that. And each year, I'm just going to point out the growth of the practice. And I'm just going to zip through these. You'll see every year this practice continues to grow in their annual revenues. And in fact, in 2018, they did their first $1 million of cash collections. This is not insurance money, by the way. This is just the money they're collecting directly from patients. Now, I got to point out something to you. I think it's pretty obvious that every year their growth continues. Here in 2020, the year of COVID, they did 1.7 million. The only practices I've ever witnessed, and I've had the pleasure of looking at now thousands of practices, literally the only practices that do what I'm showing you here, which is grow every year, are the ones that continuously add new patients. But more importantly, they don't lose others on the back end. That they're filling their practice with more and more people, and they're growing. And maybe they have to add more staff and more doctors, but nonetheless, the practice is growing and growing and growing. It's this right here is the fingerprint. It's the fingerprint, if you like, of what a high retention practice looks like. This practice, I will tell you, is full of joy and happiness. And I know this doctor very well. And this doctor is very happy in practice. The staff are very happy. Everybody's really having a great time in the practice because they're not churning over people. What we see when doctors do these 4 principles of forecasting care, frictionless payments, feedback, and frequent contact, those 4 things, they see typically about a 24% annual growth. So if we go back to this last slide here, you'll see all those percentages on the bottom. That shows each year what they grew in the purple, and in the orange showing how much they've grown cumulatively since they became a member. These practices grow month after month, year after year. And that means in your practice, imagine how your doctor will feel if CA you're helping in that process of growing. Especially, how would you feel if you're being rewarded for that? If you are earning some kind of bonus associated with that. And there's ways of doing that as well. So here's what we typically see in most practices that do this. Not all, but most. We see about a 24% annual growth in their practice. What does that look like in the practice? Obviously, it's people. I just got done mentioning. That money represents people coming into the practice. And what you see here is a picture from my own practice. We literally have hundreds and hundreds of photos up on our wall, the original Facebook wall, I guess you would say, back in the day, of all these people that have been coming into practice for hundreds and hundreds of visits over the course of many, many years. Now, granted, nobody needs 200 visits in a year, right? Nobody's going to do that. But over the course of many years, they accumulate the visits because they never leave the practice. And by the time I retired from practice, it's actually going to be 10 years ago in a few months here. It'll be 10 years since I retired. At the time when I retired from practice, we had, on average, our patients had been with us over 300 visits over the course of 5 years. So they, on average, that's how long they stayed. And how long they, and plenty more, obviously there's people more than that and people less than that, but on average, that's what happened. It was a practice full of these people. And that's what we routinely see when doctors apply these 4 principles throughout the entire process of seeing a patient. Now, I showed you that one case study, but we literally have dozens and dozens of these case studies. Here's another practice that when they came on board, they did a little over $1 million their first year. In 2020, the year of COVID, they were tripled that, almost tripled it. They were over $3 million of revenue in that practice over the course of, doing these things, of building the practice over and over. Here's another practice. And each one of these case studies is another practice. 2012 through 2020, again, every year growing the practice for the most part. A few years where they're a little flat here, but then they jumped up again in 2020. They did close to 2 million. I know this practice is well on their way to over $2 million of revenue this year alone. Here's another practice. Again, month after month. This is year after year, going back to 2010. Every year growing the practice. Every practice that does this, everyone that does this, that applies the 4 principles of frequent contact, frictionless payments, forecasting care, and feedback, all 4 of those being applied throughout the process of seeing a patient, we routinely see the same outcome. The practice grows year after year. Another case study, number 6. Here's number 7. I can show you, that's all I'm going to show you 7, but I can literally show you dozens and dozens and dozens of practices that this happens over and over and over. It's a proven model. We've been doing this now for 15 plus years with practices, and we've seen it over and over and over, where as long as you do these things, the practice will grow. Now, if we went back to 2014, and this is what it was 2004, and I showed you this, we were like, that's not that impressive, right? They haven't really grown that much. And then all of a sudden, they finally kick it in the gear. Some offices, people are hesitant. Maybe the doctor isn't fully on board. Maybe the doctor is, went to a seminar and learned something new and, was asking you, the CAs, hey, I got this new thing, you do it, right? Maybe not everybody was humming and really working as a team. And then we see finally, they kick it in gear. Something changes and then suddenly they get the right team in place, or the doctor finally gets on board, or whatever it is, and it clicks. As soon as it does, it just grows every year after that. And that's what we're here to do. There's no point of wasting time when you could simply put these things in place with the next new patient and start turning those people into loyal practice members. And eventually they become loyal to the practice. You see, in order to do that, though, you need to have systems. And we're going to change gears here for a second here. Those systems create behaviors in the practice. Those behaviors become habits, and those habits drive the outcomes. That if you as a team train on those systems, they will become the behaviors of that practice, which ultimately will become habits, and it will drive those outcomes. Systems trump your mission statements. I bet each of you right now, I don't say every one of you, but I'm going to guess a good portion of you probably have a mission statement in your practice somewhere. It might be up on a wall. It's very common for chiropractors to have a big mission statement up on their wall in their practice somewhere. We're here to serve our community, blah, 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 blah. And they're great and all wonderful. And I had one in my practice too. And we have one at our company, Cash Practice. But I will be the first to tell you, a mission statement is not what drives success in the practice. It's what you're doing that drives success. You see, systems trump your mission statements. What's happening in the halls trumps what's written on the walls. I love that quote, because you could have all the nice things written on the walls. If you don't have systems in place to execute, you may as well not even worry about it. You're not going to have the outcomes you anticipate. You either have systems by intent or default. Your systems are always a result of what you've created or what you've tolerated. You see, if you have a system in your practice that's kind of like, there was no real thought put into it, it's just kind of what you do because that's what it's always been, that's by default. And you're tolerating that versus putting into place of having systems that were designed with purpose in mind. That's ultimately what it is. Great systems, quite frankly, are a set of procedures. Now, all systems are a set of procedures, all of them are, but great ones are a set of procedures based on a clearly defined set of principles that determines how you do something. You know, chiropractic is based on principles, right? We know that the chiropractor knows that the body's a self-healing organism. It's self-healing, right? We know the master system of the body is the nervous system. We know that healing takes time. These are principles that guide what we do as clinicians with our patients. It basically, it's why we don't do drugs and surgery. It's why we do adjustments. It's like, it guides what we do. Those principles ultimately determine our systems for caring for a patient. Well, what I'm sharing with you here is that in order for you to have a process of having people become loyal to the practice, there's these principles, the 4 F's, and we build systems around those. So if we go back to our pyramid of success, we left off by saying there were these 4 principles: feedback, forecasting care, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. We do them throughout the journey to turn that into a loyal patient journey. What are the things we do? The systems we build. And by the way, that's at the end of the day, our company Cash Practice, this is what we give you. We give you the systems for these 4 principles so you can execute a loyal patient journey with your patients, ultimately giving you the retention and eventual success and joy in the practice. So these systems that we offer are, we have a tool called the Wellness Score, which I mentioned earlier is a report card for giving patients feedback. We have our Care Plan Calculator, which is a tool for building out a compliant and legal care plan. And I will mention real quick is that it's the only program out there that incorporates ChiroHealthUSA in a way to give you a compliant and legal contract to sell your services. So I'm going to guess a lot of you watching right now are users of ChiroHealthUSA, of ChiroHealthUSA. And you may be where you're still having people pay 1 visit at a time and you're using their program to make it more affordable for people. Well, I'm here to tell you, when you combine the two, when you make it more affordable with people with ChiroHealthUSA and you package it into a care plan using the Care Plan Calculator, and it does it all automatically for you, you now have the best of both worlds. It's like a Reese's peanut butter cup. It's the peanut butter and chocolate together versus peanut butter by itself and chocolate by itself. You put them together and it's the magic that you need in order to build a compliant care plan for your patients. So that's the Care Plan Calculator. Next we have on there is the auto debit system. This is the program you do to make all payments frictionless. And I will tell you, it is the best program you can use on the market. And I'm biased. Obviously, it's my company's product, but I've compared it. It is by far the best product out there I could see for running a chiropractic office for your payment processing. Plus, it'll save your practice money. Our rates are low, our fees are lower compared to anything else that's out there for the chiropractic profession. Next is the drip education system. That is the module we use for frequent contact. It gives out email campaigns and patient education. We do all of those things. And I want to mention all 4 of these things, even though they're named 4 separate systems, they all work together under one thing. It's not 4 separate things. It's literally one program that does all 4 of these things. So it gives you everything you need under one umbrella. You're not going to the separate program over here for email and a separate program for payment processing and a separate program for, your care plans and et cetera. Everything is built under one umbrella, which makes your life super easy as a CA. Now, I also want to point out one last thing about this success pyramid. I want you to notice again that the Care Plan Calculator and the auto debit system are at the center of the base. They hold the most weight, and that's done on purpose. Like I mentioned earlier, they have the greatest impact on your patient loyalty. That's why they're in the center. They're the foundation, quite frankly. Now, they're all in the foundation, but literally they are supporting the most weight in that foundation of building patient loyalty. So if you're wondering, like, should I focus on 1 or 2 of these before I focus on all 4 of them? I always say you really should make sure you're getting your care plans and your frictionless payments all in place before you worry about the other 2. Bottom line is you pick what you want to do if you want, but I will just say they have the greatest impact in the practice. So again, just to summarize, we have those 4 systems that give you the systems to execute the 4 principles throughout the entire patient journey that leads that patient to be loyal, help you build a retention practice, ultimately giving you and the doctor the success that you're looking for in that practice. That's ultimately the game plan that we're executing routinely over and over and over and over. Now, both successful and unsuccessful people often have the same goals. Yeah, I want to be successful. I want to grow the practice. I want to see 500 visits a week. Whatever it is, same goals. We all, it's very common for that. However, but they don't get the same results. Like you get 3 doctors in the same room, 5 doctors in the same room. They may all have similar goals, and some are reaching them and some aren't. Systems ultimately determine success, not the goals alone. In fact, I often say goals without systems are just a dream. It's just daydreaming. That's really what it comes down to if you don't have systems in place to execute these things. So strong systems make tough times easier. And we saw this last year. I think we could all say that last year in 2020, there were some tough times for chiropractors, especially right around March and April of last year, May. Things were really scary. We didn't know what the heck was going on in the world when it came to practice. And I will tell you, the practices that were doing these things that I just got done sharing with you, they had an easier time. And how do I know that? The practices that were doing these things, we saw that their revenues dropped only less than 3% during the courses of like April and May last year. They had a little dip in their collections. The practices that were not doing the systems fully, they were members, but they weren't fully, they hadn't fully implemented things, and they were just kind of, they just weren't fully implementing things. We can't force you to do it. You ultimately have to do it in the practice. Those practices back in April and May last year, their revenues dropped by 50%. So we say strong system makes tough times easier, and weak systems make easy times tougher. So it's really important that you get strong with these systems so that when things do get tough and things do get challenging, you're not hampered by that. So again, we follow the loyal patient journey. And if I was to go back to those 4 F's, you see them kind of outlined in the top here, these 4 things right here: forecasting care, feedback, frictionless payments, and frequent contact. Throughout the entire loyal patient journey, we've designed this so that you'll see these little blue icons. It's telling you what systems you're using at different points of the time. So this becomes your roadmap for you as a CA and you as a doctor to execute the loyal patient journey. It also becomes a fantastic tool for training, whether it's a new employee, an existing, it doesn't matter. Just like, hey, we're going to train on steps 1 and 2 today. Hey, we're going to train on step 5, this week. And you practice this stuff. So that becomes, everybody knows their role. Like in a play, in theater, everybody knows their role. Like everybody knows where they're supposed to stand. They know their lines, and they know what the intentions of that scene is. That's ultimately what we're doing here, is we're giving you the playbook. The screen, the script, whatever you want to call it, of what to do. Now, we're not telling you the words to say, because ultimately that's your job. Well, let me back up. I shouldn't say that. We do offer some of the suggested scripting on things you could be saying throughout this, so to help you guys out. But the process is not dependent on you memorizing a script. Let me just say that. What's important is the process, the intention of the words, not the exact words. So let me just clarify that as well. So the loyal patient journey is what we want to be executing throughout taking care of that person. So my question to you guys is, should you guys as CAs take the time to look at cash practice? Forget about your doctors for a second. It's great to have the doctors on board, but ultimately, I think you guys should take a look at this, and maybe you can decide that for yourself. And the question is, should you take a look at it? Well, let me give you some examples. This is interesting. You see the date on there, September 16th. Today is actually September 21st that we're doing this live. And if you're watching the recording, that's when it was. And this was just posted a few days ago on Facebook, just literally a few days ago. And it was a CA in a Facebook group asking the group, like, does anybody here use credit card processor that's integrated with ChiroTouch? And she goes on to, explain, why she's looking for that. And this was a very specific question about payment process. Obviously, that's what she's asking about. And these were the comments being said. Life without cash practice is one I'll never live. Meaning this office, Dr. Tony Ebel, they use our payment. They use everything, but they use the payment system specifically in the ChiroTouch integration. That's what we're referring to. Life without cash practice is one I'll never live. Been a member for a decade. Okay, Scott goes on to say, cash practice is the way to go. My wife and I are amazed at how much we love CP. By the way, they go on to say rates are great and the service is even better. By the way, did I say how much I love CP? Cash practice is everything. Cash practice. We have used cash practice for years. It integrates with ChiroTouch. They also have amazing customer service and support. Go look at our Google reviews and you'll see real quick. Here we go. Definitely worth it. Okay. Don't waste your time looking elsewhere. Anyone switch from another company to cash practice and notice a difference in savings? Someone was asking in that group, and someone says, I definitely saved since switching to CP. CP is also way easier to use for us in the office. They do all the stuff so-and-so does as well. And they go on to say, now CAs, listen to this, because we often say this, that when offices institute our systems in their practice, especially the frictionless payments, they will generally save about 40 hours of payroll per month. As CAs, what that means is you're spending about 40 hours per month less. That doesn't mean you're not working those hours. You're just not spending that time dealing with money. Here's an office going on to say, we probably save 10 to 15 hours every week. Backing up exactly what we say. Generally, we see about 40 hours a month being saved in an office, that you're spending that time doing other things other than worrying about money, interacting with patients, doing fun stuff, asking for referrals, all the fun stuff that goes along with being a CA at the practice. So I share that with you because it just makes your life easier running that office. So what are the 5 things, going back to the original title of today, what are the 5 things CAs can do to help a practice thrive? Frequent contact, feedback, frictionless payments, forecasting error. The 4 Fs, you help that practice institute those things, and I guarantee you will see that practice grow. You will see it thrive. What's the 5th thing? Book a 10-minute loyal patient conversion call. Book a time to speak with one of our team members to spend 10 minutes answering some questions just to see whether or not we are a fit to help you grow your practice. How do you do that? You simply go to cashpractice.com/ChiroHealthUSA CA. ChiroHealthUSA CA, ChiroHealthUSA CA. So cashpractice.com. Christy can go ahead and put that link in the chats for those that make it easy for you guys to just click on it and go there. You could book a 10-minute call. And here's what will happen. When you have that call, one of our experts will answer your questions. They'll be happy to schedule some time to do a demonstration with you if you want to see a demo of what we actually do with our software. No obligation, no pressure, I promise you. It's just simply an opportunity to learn more. When we taught in Michigan this last week, almost every CA came up to us and booked that call because they saw such value in what we do to make their lives easier in the practice and help that practice grow. And as an incentive, okay, we like to reward and we have to incentivize people to take action. If you book your call and have it before the end of this month, so today is again the 21st, if it's live, and obviously if you're watching the recording, by September 30th, we'll give you the opportunity to do, if you decide to do business with us, if I can get the words out of my mouth, business with us, you'll save $200. And that is our gift to you guys. So simply go to that landing page, cashpractice.com/CHUSA CA. And I would be happy to see you guys become at least book that call, and we'd be happy to be of service to you. Christy, I want to pause here for a moment and see if there was any questions that came through, if questions or anything specific you wanted me to address further. And I want to give a big shout out to ChiroHealthUSA for, again, having us. And I know you were looking forward to Holly being here. I hope I lived up to your expectations of doing a good job. And I'm sure Holly will be back in a future episode of this program, and we look forward to that. I'll turn it back over to you, Christy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bodson. I have one that said, what do habits become? We missed it. It went really quickly.
Say that one more time.
What do habits become?
Oh, what they become outcomes. How habits drive your outcomes. So systems drive your behavior. I think that's what it is. System behavior becomes your habits, and habits drive your outcomes. I got that memorized.
Yeah, that was the only one. I did post that link in there so that you can schedule your 10-minute call with the team at Cash Practice. They're absolutely amazing. Some of my favorite people in the entire world to work with, and they are so knowledgeable and able to answer your questions. So don't miss that opportunity to reach out to them and talk about how they can help your practice specifically. Just a reminder, we have our next webinar in 2 weeks with Dr. Chris Petrucco-Napoli. She was scheduled to be here about a month and a half ago. She also got sick. And no, she had a family emergency. She didn't get sick. She had a family emergency the day before the webinar and was not available. So we've been having to move some people around either due to illness or other issues coming up. She is rescheduled for October the 12th, and it's a focus on women and chronic pelvic pain issues. And she's going to be talking about that. So we're super excited. We'll be posting more webinars for the next, for October will be coming up. They'll be added by the end of this week. We have some really exciting speakers coming to talk about a wide variety of topics, from nutrition. Are you getting the most out of your EHR? I love this conversation. I actually just had it this weekend in Wisconsin with somebody. We were talking about EHR software in my class. And what we realized is that we have these big plans when we have software, then we put it in place and we use like this much of it, right? So we're not even maximizing the use of the EHR or utilizing all of the information that it can provide for the practice and helping you to grow your practice, or to figure out, as one of my favorite images that you use, Dr. Miles, is the leaky bucket. You don't even realize that you have a hole there because you're not utilizing those reports. So we have some really great topics covering all aspects. Oh, Dr. Tom, do the cash patients have to join ChiroHealthUSA? Well, we don't have a thing such as cash patients. You mean self-pay? Not necessarily. Depends on how you have their care plan set up and how much of a discount you're given.
Yeah. You want me to address that for a moment?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I like to keep it really simple for you guys. And that is, we help you define how much of a discount you want to be doing in your practice. And some of you might be asking, why do we even do a discount? A discount is often done in order to make care affordable when people are privately paying out of their pocket, assuming your fees are really high for your PI and those types of, maybe you're keeping your fees high for PI and you're billing for all these things, but you want to make it affordable for someone to pay out of pocket. So you're going to go give a discount. And you want to also sometimes do a discount when you're doing a care plan, because that care plan is a bulk of services. And quite frankly, most people expect some kind of discount when they buy things in bulk. When you buy business cards, you expect a discount associated with that if you buy 1,000 versus 100 cards, as an example. That's why we do it. Now, the question is, do you need ChiroHealthUSA? Here's how I answer that. If you determine you need a discount greater than 15%, then yes, you do. If your discounts are 15% or less, then no, you don't. That's really the simplest way of doing it. So you have to decide first, how big of a discount do you need to offer in your practice? And we find most practices, quite frankly, do want to be able to provide a discount greater than 15%. So then if that's the case, the legal compliant way of doing that is to become a discount medical plan provider, or a member of that with ChiroHealthUSA. You become that provider, you now are legally allowed to do the discounts greater than 15%. So you just simply you can answer the question yourself. Do I need to do discounts greater than 15% in any situation? If so, then yes, you do. If not, then no, you don't. So that's the simplest. It has nothing to do with whether you're in network, out of network, or with an insurance company, or without an insurance company, or whether it's cash. It's nothing to do with that. It's simply, here's my fees, and do I need to be able to discount my fees to a certain level to make it affordable for people to be on a care plan or be able to pay for it out of their pocket? And if that amount I need to lower it is greater than 15%, then yes. When you do work with ChiroHealthUSA and Cash Practice, what we teach you to do is, let's say you determine you want your discounts to be 25% when someone's on a care plan. What we'll often do is have you do a ChiroHealthUSA agreement where your discounts are, let's say, 15 to 20%, not the full 25%. You do a smaller amount. And then when someone goes on a care plan, you add an additional prompt pay discount on top of your ChiroHealthUSA discount. And that's beyond the scope of today's call to go into the details of that. But there is a strategy we have in mind to help people be incentivized, financially incentivized, to actually choose the care plan versus not be on a care plan. So we teach you all of that stuff, but our companies work together so that when you're working with ChiroHealthUSA, they know you're a Cash Practice member and vice versa. So they help you set up your ChiroHealthUSA agreement appropriately, and we help you set up it on our appropriate, and our teams work behind the scenes on your behalf to make sure everything is being set up correctly for you. I hope I answered that well enough.
You did. And I will say this, and it's so funny because I never really thought about it this way, but I actually heard Heather have a conversation with somebody, and somebody asked her, they're like, all y'all ever talk about is discounting, and how does that help you grow your practice? Well, the reality is that 80% of chiropractic providers in this country don't even charge market value. And one of the things that we do, like, we will tell you if you need ChiroHealth or not. If you're doing everything right, you're not offering more than the 15% discount, don't have crazy cash fees, and we're going to tell you, hey, you're doing everything right, you're following the rules and regs, you don't need us. But we will also help you to evaluate your fees, because chances are you haven't evaluated your fees in 5-10 years. And so you're way under market. And so that's also an issue. We want to make sure that you're charging market value, because one of your leaky bucket holes is that you're missing out on revenue that you could be making, but you're not even charging what is allowed. So there's a whole lot of stuff to it, but the bottom line is it's multifaceted. But if you're only offering a 5 to 15% discount, you don't really need ChiroHealthUSA, but you might, because you might be offering 10%, but you might be 20 to 30% under the market and might need to raise fees. So the best thing to do is to reach out to ChiroHealthUSA, schedule a time to work with Mandy, let her ask you, I don't know how she does it, like 5 questions or less. She can find out everything she needs to know about your practice and tell you whether or not, like, here's where we need to tweak. And she'll even tell you how to tweak it on your own, so you don't need ChiroHealthUSA. So just a thought. There you go. Dr. Tom is a ChiroHealthUSA provider, but So, and Dr. Tom, if you have not evaluated your fees in a while, you need to reach out to Ginger or Heather, whoever you're working with. Because even ChiroHealthUSA providers need to look at theirs every single year. Can you use some systems of cash practice and not others? For example, care plans.
Yes, absolutely. We sell our services a la carte. So you can join cash practice for literally as little as $49 a month for up to 2 systems. And it goes, if you want all 4 systems, it goes to $99 a month, starting at that, I should say. The pricing is kind of geared towards how many patients you have in the database. So if you have a really large practice versus a smaller one. But yes, you could buy systems 1, 2, 3, or 4, any combination of them. So, and as far as that $200 savings, literally, if you were to do the demo and sign up, you can literally get started for like $49, and you're off and running with one system, and that gets you started. You know, it's like anything; it takes time to learn each one, so you don't have to sign up on all of them right from the beginning.
You don't, but you'll end up wanting all of them.
Yeah,
because they're phenomenal. That auto debit is the stuff that dreams are made of.
I will share with you real quick, and I know we're running over time, but I'll just mention our auto debit system. We just had a big release of a new version, basically. And in this new release, there's some really cool new features. One of which I know has been a home run for UCAs, and that is the ability to run a single payment and have it split between family members. What that means is, I'm sure you've experienced where a husband and wife come in and you have to charge each of their visits separately so that it posts correctly in their EHR. You know, if you put it all under the wife, it all goes under the wife, and then you have to go into the EHR and, you know, remove a credit from her and put it into his account, etc. We have a feature now where you can literally run that $100 payment. If it's $50 for each of them, it'll automatically split the $50 for the patient records. We call it the payment splitter. And not just for one-time payments, but even your recurring auto debits. Maybe you have a family of a husband, a wife, and a child coming in for $250 a month, and it should be $100 for the wife, $100 for the husband, and $50 for the kid. And that's the auto debit, the way it should be broken up. Well, instead of setting up 3 separate auto debits, you literally set up one auto debit for $250, and it will know to split $100, $150 between the 3 family members in your EHR. So we have these really cool new features, and a whole bunch of them. Like we have another one called the Family Wallet that lets you share billing between family members, so you're not having to store, you know. Bottom line is, it's really, really good. So you thought it was good before. It's heads and shoulders. Like there's nothing that touches it in the marketplace right now for the chiropractic profession. So I really encourage you to have an opportunity to take a look at that. And so, but thank you for that, Christy. I appreciate that.
Well, and I do want to say too that you're probably overpaying on your credit card billing fees anyway. And so the really cool thing about working with Cash Practice is they have so many clients that they have negotiated rates. And if you already mentioned this, forgive me, I'm still recovering from a minor concussion, but I have to say that legit, that for my friends that use this, I can say that the prices, that those fees can't be beat, and that eats up a lot of your revenue. I mean, not a lot, but it seems like a lot every month when you look at that.
Yeah, and I'll share with you. That's because, you know, we do have a large portfolio of doctors who we, as a portfolio, that's how the bank looks at us. They look at us as a company. We're a portfolio to them, and because we have such a large portfolio of offices that utilize their services, the commercial processing, we have negotiating power, and we didn't always have that, but we do now, and we've had it for probably a good 10 years now, a good decade, where we're able to go to them and negotiate rates, and based upon the size of the practice. And, you know, not everybody qualifies for the same thing, but most practices do really well. And we're very confident in saying that 99% of the processes out there, we beat them. So oftentimes what will happen to reassure you in your practice is we will do what's called a competitive rate analysis, where you can share with us a statement or two from your current merchant processor, and our team will do an analysis of it and show you how much they can actually save you in comparison. And I'll end with this because I know we're way over time, and that is our membership is month to month. So if you do try us, you're not locked into a contract. If you don't like us after a month or two, you can cancel with no further obligation. It's simple as that. So we have to literally earn your business every month. And you'll see, if you go to our Google reviews or our Capterra reviews, you'll see 5-star reviews on our service across the board, because that's ultimately, you know, we're here to serve you and your practices. So Christy, thank you again for the time. I really appreciate it. I know Holly really appreciates me doing this for her as well. She shared that with me, so I'll pass that on as well. And you guys have a really great one, and we look forward to talking with you guys. Be sure you mention that you saw the program, so that when the team talks to you, they know that you are educated on the 4 Fs. They know that you know that material.
Yes. And again, everybody has 10 minutes. What do you have to lose? But just find out from their amazing, friendly team, is this right for you? Is it beneficial? Is it going to save you money on credit card processing fees? The sky's the limit. It's 10 minutes of your time and it could save you lots of money and make you more efficient. Have an amazing rest of your day, a fabulous week. And if you're in North Dakota, I'll see you this weekend. And if you're in Ohio, I'll see you next weekend. But until then, our next webinar, October 12th. Talk to you later. Bye, y'all.